Rock and roll. Kia ora, everybody. What's up? It is Robett. Another episode, Robett Live. Finishing off the week, just before everyone goes into another 3 days of probably what's been similar to the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It is the bro, Nikhil, Ravishankar. How are you, mate?
Ooh, I'm
Do you
very
like, do you
good,
like that
thank you.
hype up for Victor Chief Digital Officer? Do you just like flex on him when
There we
you
go.
walk in? You're like, flex on him, flex on him.
I'll take my
Um,
robe off.
I do like it how you've just crafted the angling to just hide the Peloton bike and the Black Panther thing, but I can hit this and then bam, there it is.
Oh,
And about I've been waiting to do that because I knew you'd do that. But what's dope we were just talking about is it's signed not by Chadwick but by
the editor of the movie.
that's dope. It's
Yeah, yeah.
the power mover behind the power moves. I like it. Um, Obviously we are having a quick chat before. You say if your bubble's good. But
Yes.
as the chief digital officer for a company which has a lot to do with digital and energy and tech, I'm imagining your ears are probably sore of headphones for 12 hours back to back of Zoom calls, jumping to jumping. How are you doing? How are you coping? How's the mental headspace of so much noise and craziness? How you doing?
It's genuinely been really good. I've had conversations with a bunch of people who know me quite well, and they've all made a comment that said, "Wonder how you were going to deal with the situation," because you're always out there talking to people, and in workshops and that type of activity, right? But actually slotted in just fine. This transition from level 4 to level 3 means we have an obligation as Vector to get it absolutely spot on, because we have a lot of people out in the field at the moment, not just on the electricity side, but on some of our other businesses as well, LPG and metering and so on. So a lot of work at the moment is to just get us to 11:59 p.m. on Monday in the right shape. And that's keeping a bunch of us busy. We're also looking at, as everybody else is, large corporate or a small business, obviously different impacts depending on the sector you're in, just scenario modeling, right? Understanding what the organization would look like if we were in various different sort of lockdown levels, and what that means from a people perspective and so on. And also in my job, I've an incredible team, and part of that responsibility is to make sure they're all doing well. So this almost forces you to take that leadership responsibility very explicitly, and not just rely on corridor conversations and so on. So it's been good. It's going well.
Yeah, it's a it's always got to be a challenge when if you put the amount of output and responsibility that you've had on your shoulders for the last month, that's one thing. Then if you then put every single decision maker not in the same room, that's then another thing. How is the how's the mental bandwidth been?
Uh, yeah, it's sort of context switching is a real issue, right? I don't multitask very well, so we've there's been a lot of context switching happening, but also, the positives coming out of this. And I was on a call with my boss this afternoon, and one of the things we were talking about is just listing down the things we just want to bank and keep doing as we go into the future, right? Even outside of lockdown, because there's so many positives. We're meeting as an exec team once every 2 days, and it's short, sharp, to the point. There is no real opportunity to overanalyze a situation, or distract the conversation with things that aren't necessarily as important. So your materiality filter goes up. How you prioritize activity becomes sharper. So yeah, mental bandwidth's fine. Uh, it's just, for me, the situation, what I really worry about for organizations like ours is the ability to deal with a second or a third crisis while you're dealing with this one. And I think that's when the rubber really hits the road. We've done really, really well in terms of keeping the lights on and keeping operations going in this sort of level 4 environment. But 2 weekends ago, we were expecting a very large storm to hit Auckland, for example, right? And it was preparing for all of that in this context, which was a real novel challenge, and everyone's up for it, right? That's why we do jobs like this. So it's things like that get exciting and start tapping you out on the mental bandwidth side.
Yeah, especially when there's all the different modeling you have to do. If this, then that. If this, then that. Plus weather, plus this, plus people, plus shifting. What was been the biggest fear over the last 4 weeks with level four in your head? What was the thing that you were just like, shit? Let's just make sure. Dot dot dot. What was priority number one for you for your team over this last period?
It's sort of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you think about prioritization. The most fundamental job I have in my role is to make sure that, in the context of COVID, is to make sure the organization can continue operating, right? So, enabling working from home was has had to happen, and we did start that work, you know, sooner than many others, and rightly so. And when Simon, the CEO, asked us, to start preparing for it, there was even conversations about, has this guy started to, lose his mind a bit? Why is he asking us to get the whole organization moving out, to run pilots and things like that? But it all held us in really good stead, which was fantastic. Alongside that, which is the working from home, we have a very small group of individuals who are very, very technical, who run all our energy systems, be it gas or electricity, LPG, metering, and so on. And you don't have, you can't, there's no extensive backup. So if a team of those people got infected, it would be quite an issue for us.
Well, you just give
So
him some sleeping bags, chuck them in there, slip him through some up and go. There you go, Bolt.
yeah, exactly. No, we had to build 3 new control rooms.
Wow, to
We
separate them.
split to separate the teams and isolate. So these were more working bubbles rather than family bubbles, right? We had to do the same with field crews. So all of that kind of stuff takes a lot of planning, and you don't want to necessarily rush through it, but you didn't have time on your hands as well, right? So that was the biggest concern. But it's gone really well, and people step up, in times of crisis.
What's
been great.
been the dopest ninja move that someone in the team has come up with on the fly, or that was really forward thinking that you wouldn't have thought of? Like, has there been a thing you're like, holy shit, they thought laterally and just made some flipping ninja shit? Like, has there been anything that's really stood out from one of your team that that idea would never have happened if it was just regular business as usual?
There's actually a long list of that, Robett, believe it or not. I mean, it's liberating, right? People just start thinking outside the box on a consistent basis when they're dealing with this sort of scenario. I mean, one of the things we had to do, and this was something that was, I would put it in the out of the box category, is worst case scenario for us, we would have to bring some controllers out of retirement. And obviously, they fall in
few phone calls, yeah.
fall in the high risk bracket, right? Because these are 70-plus-year-olds. So we have the option of onboarding them through a live video feed where they can actually talk a more junior sort of apprentice through very key, physically doing stuff. And that was something we had to stand up as an option very, very quickly. But technology allows you to do things like that now, right? You can get a 75-year-old, control room operator with 50 years of experience who's sitting there and, enjoying their retirement to say, need your help. And they're very, very keen, obviously, they're up for it, but we've got to look out for their well-being too. So
you
doing
rang up a
things
few
like
of these
that.
old mates and they're just like hanging out. They've been out, like flipping John has been in the game for like 40 years, gets a phone call. Fuck, what's up? What? It's just like, okay. the nation needs you. Energy sector needs you. That's
Look,
awesome.
we didn't have to activate that, obviously, because our control room staff are all safe and everything's going just fine. But as an option to activate, and getting prepared for it, it was something that was good fun to work through.
You can like post this because they stepped up to it. You could have like a weekly mini Zoom chat, and they could just tell you like energy stories from back in the day for the young bucks, and they just like feed them down. Like in '72, I took a spanner and did some shit, and like create the alumni effect. Like I really have been thinking about this idea of corporates of like with like Snotty and shit, like all these stories he's got. It's like get them out, like, and think of like someone that's been in the game for so long, and if you're like 20 years old, you come in fresh gun, and then you just hear these actual stories from like alumni effect of an organization. It's the same
Yeah.
thing would always be in like ski fields and stuff, because you'd have like the old timers that would tell all the stories, and you'd like get into it, and then like that rock there and this thing here. It's interesting. It's probably a good segue
Yeah.
actually. How have you led how have you led it, like uh, Vector is not a small company. How have you led a company virtually to keep culture?
Yeah. I mean, good question, right? The I mean, you can't communicate enough in these types of situations, and you can't just communicate one way. Um, you also need to leverage the teams themselves to continue to maintain the culture that you have. I mean, one of the things we've talked about as a leadership team group in my own area is, what a challenge this would have been if we had some fundamental cultural issues, right? Some
Mm.
real gnarly issues that we hadn't addressed around psychological safety or fundamental trust issues. The ability to, every voice counts. These leaning into hard challenges. We have this thing about no super chickens on the team, right? Like
Super
you know,
chickens. What's a
yeah,
super chicken?
there's a real great TED talk on this about having essentially heroes, right, who come in and
Oh yeah.
save the day. We explicitly try and not be a team of super chickens, right? There is everyone's here for a reason, and the team above all else. And when you have those fundamentals right, it makes it easy. I think it'd be really difficult if you had some of those fundamental challenges and you had to deal with the lockdown. I think that would just drive the teams just that much more further apart. But if the fundamentals are right and you're going into it, you can double down on that. You will no doubt draw down on some of that goodwill, but there's enough scaffolding there to hold everything together.
Mm.
I've been talking to the teams we always used to have a weekly huddle because our teams are across multiple cities. We continue to do that. We have every team, we check in on each other, and we explicitly make a point to differentiate between a call to check in on each other versus a work in progress or status update call, or a business as usual sort of, let's try and figure out a solution to a problem call, right? Because in my field, the temptation is always to jump to doing work, and sometimes you've got to explicitly carve out some time to just check in on people
Yeah.
and see how we're all doing. So,
Mm.
a whole bunch
It's a
of
good
things.
it's a good
Yeah.
point. Like right at the kickoff of this, one of my predictions was I was thinking, a movement like this just amplifies anything that's been good or bad in an organization. And at the end of this, I've been thinking about leadership. And one of the first things one of the first days was we had Jason Paris on, CEO of Voda, and he was saying, like leading with kindness and being kind. And then, Vic Crone was talking about, leading with love and just this whole thing. And I've been thinking about over a time like this, bad leaders are now being exploited and are probably going to get the boot. Good leaders have created these tribes and this glue and this like crazy, almost like the most genius retention strategy of all time, because going through this together as a unit is going to be such a bond that is just like going to unis together and alumni, or just they're really in it together. And I think at the end of this, I was talking to a lawyer and a HR person there, and then the lawyer side was like, there's going to be about all the bad businesses. We've got a lot of I'm already getting employment things that are going on right now. And then from the HR side, from the good side, it was like, and the bad side as well, then the flow on is that basically there's a whole bunch of legal activity and then huge wave of weapons that have just, this has been the final like nail in the coffin to be like, stuff this, I want more to my life. Or even so much the fact of certain leaders realizing, to your point before about checking in them as humans, realizing that this isn't just your new work life, is actually work and your personal life too.
Yeah.
And there's things out as well as part of the whole package to I forget who we were talking to yesterday. I'm saying, part of your your new job title now is to take care of you and your family, and that is part of your new job title. Because if that's not taken care of as part of this, everything else is stuffed. And just the mind
Yeah.
shift of certain leadership, I think, is really exposing and putting a big filter through good and bad leadership for the future, which I think is in many ways is a flipping awesome, because it's going to get rid of a shit ton of weak links, you know.
Yeah. To quote a robettism, shit just got real.
Yeah, bro. Dude, handy. And on that note, of boards, and I wanted to jump onto this. I think this is going to be, there's two trains of thought. First is offense, defense, right? Defense, old doggers, scared of change, stuff this, handbrake, and boom. But the game's changed so much that I'm actually wondering if there's also going to be a huge exodus from members of boards, because they won't have the mental bandwidth or the too much stubbornness or whatever to be open enough mentally to think about all these new ways that things could be done, that they've gone through it, and they're just going to tap out. And so what I've been wondering about is, are they, for those that want to use COVID as a vehicle, as a great way to bring in new thinking and diverse trains of thought, and some people that maybe look a little bit darker than usual. I think it's going to be awesome, right? Like, do you think that board makeups, are we being like maybe airy fairy, or do you genuinely feel leadership has changed? I feel it has, but boards will change. What do you think is going to happen at the exec level around the thinking, right? What's your
Yeah.
take, prediction, thoughts, whatever?
Hmm. It's a complicated, complex, both complicated and complex question.
Well, thank you. I've been studying very hard, or drinking, one of the two.
I think, like leadership, the mental resilience aspect of individuals is being tested, right, in this environment, and it's just another one of those things where you in these situations it's very hard to fake it.
Yeah, because you
And,
can't. It's too transparent, right? It's too visible. It's too seen. It's too totally. Yep.
yeah, in terms of how you're going to, you've got to be pretty transparent around your decision making frameworks and what you value and all of those types of things, right? And so from that perspective, I'm an eternal optimist. I think there will be opportunity for a lot of people to do a lot of things that they otherwise wouldn't have been given an opportunity to do, and especially if you focus on delivering value and not try and pick off too much, it's a great opportunity to showcase what you can bring to the table, right?
Yep. Flex
And
on it.
so, yeah, just and in my job and my team's roles, it's literally a once in a lifetime opportunity, as bad as that might sound, to really show who's the real deal and who can help organizations sort of navigate some of these situations. And so from that perspective, it hopefully does help people who have either hadn't had a voice and or for whatever reason couldn't showcase what they actually had to offer, a real level playing field to do that. I think, and part of that is being able to think differently, think outside the box, right? So and people are valuing I'll give you a good example. So when we are running through a situation, we will go, okay, there is a BAU way of addressing this, right? Obviously, in this instance, we got to power that up. And so you just have to do what you would have otherwise done, much quicker and much more efficiently, say, for example. At the same time, we're asking the question, can we think of 3 ways we could do that thing completely differently?
Yeah.
And we're
What's a ninja
almost running
move?
that. Yeah, what's the ninja move, right? And running that as a very specific parallel path. And so what that's doing is it's inviting people to put some crazy radical ideas on the table, which otherwise would not have been even asked for, right?
Yeah.
And so we almost explicitly as an executive team going, okay, there's this way of solving this. It's tried and tested. We've done this, but can we just set a slightly different set of parameters and say, can we completely flip this on its head and solve it in a completely different way? And that's where the crazy ideas are coming from, right?
But we're talking to Tim Alp, obviously, we both know it, and he was saying, like, all ideas I remember I was in a room and the CEO, there was probably three layers of, I guess, power within a room. And it was just very kind of like formulaic copy paste shit. And it was just a bit weird. I'm like, what's this shit? And then he bails. And the next thing you know, it all opens up and it just, and I'm like, guys, what's this shit? And they're like, oh, we can't because, CEO, blah, blah. And I'm like, he is paying you to do the job because you know the shit that he doesn't. If you're not brave enough to have that conversation, you're not doing your flipping job. But it's a fear of it's almost like potential shame, a public shame thing of that idea. But I think there's something to this. I've been thinking about it, but recently. So mental health, right? Until John Kirwan came along and created a Trojan horse and a vehicle for other people to talk about the thing without branding it, it became, oh, I've just got a case of the JKs, or they branded not the crazy, but they branded the uncomfortable that no one wanted to go there, and it actually has made it so much better. But in business, how many times is the leader in the room someone beneath him with hierarchy that is seeing things not flat, doesn't say the flippin' idea or the thing which could genuinely help because they don't feel it's their place. And I think exactly to your point, so I've been calling them ninja moves, right? Like how do you brand up the ninja move thinking? So we go, cool, pre-COVID, PC, this is our hierarchical way, but you brand the flippin' the same way Air New Zealand did with Grab a Seat. They created an entire vehicle of like, dope. All right, cool. Give me the three ninja moves. And then you brand the thing that's crazy so they don't feel to talk crazy in it. But there's something in there. And talking to like Tim and just a couple of these other crew, I've just been thinking like, how do you exactly put process around the crazy, brand it so it makes employees underneath them to feel safe in a safe space, to not feel shamed publicly. Then
Yeah,
and I bet there is so many awesome ideas that are popping out from all over the show, and you just probably just collect them. You
absolutely.
might have a Slack thing of just idea stream of crazy shit, and that makes business better. Like that gets me excited because then it feels like you're empowering the underdog, the young buck, the what was seen as hierarchical, just to flatten that shit out and actually do better for business. I'm real passionate about that, because I think there's so many
I,
awesome ideas which don't happen because of that, because of fear.
I agree. And I mean, I know you're passionate about that too, because we've spoken about this many a time,
Handy,
right?
handy.
I think, there's a lot of things now we take for granted as if it came out of some deep R&D and a bunch of researchers sort of cooped up in a lab somewhere, and they came up with this beautiful thing we are adopting, right? Actually, when you think of concepts like the one that we're in my area and in related sort of fields, current flavor of the month is sort of agile or agile DevOps, right? Um, this is just formalizing, to your point, and branding something that was used to develop something quickly that solved a real problem, right? So
Mm.
there was a way of sort of boiling the ocean and figuring stuff out, and when you did not have time and resources and you had to solve problems quickly, people just got on with it, and then retrospectively you branded that and you went, oh, that's agile, now we can sign up for it, right? I do believe, like you say, that coming out of this lockdown and this sort of crisis will be a bunch of things that will get branded and then marketed,
Yep.
as methods that we use, where we almost induce the world we've had to be in, and sort of try and bottle the
Mm.
positives that have come out of this, right? And one of those things is, so much of corporate decision making is based on social cohesion, and when you are different,
Hmm.
um, you fundamentally question the social cohesion aspect, right? Diversity and social cohesion sometimes can be at odds. If you have, a lady with a scarf, coming out of the Middle East, part of your leadership team, you know, having a beer at 5 o'clock every evening, or on a Friday evening, sorry,
Mm.
where you discuss your power moves, as you call it, is just not an option, right?
Yeah.
Um, but
Mm.
you can't do that today. There is
Mm.
no, I mean, yes, teams are getting on Zoom and you've got kids running around, and it's a little bit more inclusive. So a lot more people
Mm.
can be part of those Friday, a couple of people might be having a glass of wine while having the same discussion, but it is become a more inclusive place. And that social cohesion thing isn't the ticket to the dance anymore. So people should feel a little bit more fearless, because
Mm.
like this conversation, right? You're in these meetings and you're going, okay, Nikhil, what's your perspective on it? We don't have to have small talk. I can get out my views a little bit more, um, more clearly potentially because of it, right? And I think that's one of the side effects that hopefully we can bottle post this thing is not relying on social cohesion, which requires you to have less diversity in a way of thought and otherwise, to transmit ideas between humans, right?
Yep.
And if we can start using technology to break that barrier down a bit and let everyone have a voice, that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, it's the power of. I don't know if it's the power of the question or it's the there's something so by being able to unlock like true idea and expressions and whatever is so powerful. Like I'm thinking, if it was, let's say for argument's sake, it's you brand it as the ninja move, but the question you ask is like, what could MacGyver do, right? Like, what could MacGyver do? Oh, and because I remember as a kid, I mean, shit, the MacGyver was the shit. Like he'd make a flipping car out of a toothpick, and it was always this ninjery, tinkery, side lateral thinking shit. But like a question that you could ask someone who doesn't, especially when it's very when you're trained in. I was talking to someone yesterday in corporate marketing, and they were saying it's so difficult when you've been almost like creativity to a certain point is being beaten out of you because of the process of how it works. And in a time where it's nothing, the only success is lateral, and the only success is flipping Hail Mary, flipping overtime, fourth quarter shit. How do you brand that in a way that can create structure? So I think about that. It's like, yeah, what could MacGyver do? Well, he could, dot, dot, dot. He could. And you like give it that, I know there's power in the Trojan horse. Anyway, it's been on my mind for a while because what I don't want to have happen is all this great idea and creativity that can make business better just lost by the wayside. The old mates at the top are just like, okay, cool. Now we're back in the office team. Giddy up, get back into it. And then you're kind of like, well, there's all this like this was the moment to do all that change stuff. And so I'm actually wondering if there's going to be like a old school versus new school battle off of business model structure process systems, and I feel that this is their moment because and I've brought your name up to a few people because I said, like I've saying the threes and fours are becoming the ones and twos. The young buck piss off, go get me a coffee, dude, is now like starting to has a seat at the table. And in a moment like this, now they're getting the flex, and now the flipping the Clives of the world and the U's and the Eds and the whoever, they're starting to like get to that spot and be like, all right, well I feel boom, and I've actually got the title to do it. So I feel I'm hoping that the new ones and twos that are those young bucks in that squeeze now can actually flex and be trusted, listened to and trusted and empowered from those above, not those ideas squashed down. Because if we go to back to business as usual before, I reckon we've just missed probably the greatest opportunity in humanity's history in terms of business and tech and what could be for the future. I'm very passionate
Absolutely.
about that.
And it is a platform, right? And once you're given that platform, and you know, I've got the privilege of having one of those sort of platforms. We've got to take it. This, if you talk about it from a generational point of view, and nothing gives you personally more confidence and sort of also cements that platform than getting shit done.
Yeah.
And so when we have that, we should that's why picking battles and just nailing it is part of the process. And I think we need to look at that deliberately, and think through where can we add value quickly by bringing new lateral ideas to bear, or just bringing that just energy that's required to get some of these things done. The other thing I
Embrace the
would say,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, Robert, is if there's one thing I could say to if there was one thing I think everyone can do and sort of do it explicitly, is not just come out of this situation and sort of organically transition, right? Yeah, in program delivery, we have this ritual that we call post implementation review. And when I run those, there are no rank reviews. Anyone can come in and talk about what could have been done better, what went amazing, what have we all learned, et cetera, right? I think we need to run a post-implementation review of 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 COVID, and almost at every level as we transition from 4, hopefully back to normal, or whatever the new normal is, over time. Because by asking the question, what did we learn and what have we done differently that we should be bottling and just continuing to do post-COVID, I think there's going to be a ton of gems in there. And it would be a real shame if we didn't sort of bottle
It's
all of that up.
the handy. I'm just wondering if you think of the branding of Agile, the methodology of thinking of structure and organizations, there is someone is going to brand this shit as a new thing for all sorts of business. And one of the things I've been thinking about as well, and I'm interested in your take on it, is when you've got a small business and you're in a small physical location with a small budget and you've a small business, and then you've got a big corporate that has big big has resource and big can go and throw cash at this and that and blah blah blah. Cool, get it. Now that everyone's now virtual and remote, it's even the playing field because there's a million different other brands and businesses, but they're all using the same Zoom account, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, the same tech. They all have the same tech. So then all of a sudden I thought the startups were always seen to have the edge because they were faster and more nimble and quicker and they could execute. And then I'm thinking, wait a second, if the corporates now have the same tech as the startup and the startups are using the same tech as them, doesn't that mean that technically, as long as the creativity is right, corporates could actually be the new startup in terms of thinking and implementation and creativity? And I'm wondering if that might fit, because if you have the corporate budget with the speed of the speedboat, I'm kind of like, holy shit, that's like that gets me excited for what business could be, right?
Yeah, and this, I've never subscribed to this narrative of the large corporate versus the small startup, battle of the ages type narrative, right? Because I think what you lose in that narrative is actually a lot of value that is created when those two worlds learn to operate well. And especially now when, to your point, you don't need to own a lot of assets, or you don't need to have a lot of resource to innovate, for many different reasons, right? Not least because the building blocks are so easily available. Video conferencing as an example you've just touched upon, right? It is, those building blocks are relatively freely available. You can create new value without necessarily hogging all these assets and or resources, right? But if you are a large organization that's had the privilege of being, a manager or owner of these sort of assets, then yeah, and if you believe you can also create value like a startup, because if you can disconnect this sort of need to leverage that every time to think of new value, then both parties have, to your point, equal opportunity to address a problem and create value from it. But I think real value sometimes get created when these two sets start to work together really well, right? And start to employ things that work on either side of the equation. I'll give you a real example here, because in general terms it might not make sense. Vector is a large scale asset owner, right? When we look at what's happening around the world, if you look at the Airbnb case study, overquoted, but let's go with it for now. They don't own a single hotel, right? They're using other people's assets to create value. And as a large asset owner, you can be freaked out about that and go, wait a minute, so are we going to be disintermediated? Is innovation going to happen at the edge? And are they going to just draw all the value away from what we're here to provide, et cetera, right? And that's the us versus them narrative. The way we look at it is we've got this great platform in Auckland called the energy grid, right? Which has historically been a transportation mechanism of energy, right? Gets an electron to go power up a light bulb from a dam, right? Can we convert that into an energy marketplace so that people can bring new business models, new innovation on top of the grid? So the grid now becomes more of an eBay for energy rather than a roading network type mindset, right? And for that, you've got to think of your asset base as a large organization as a platform for innovation and open that up and not keep it closed. But also have startups wanting to work with you in a symbiotic way. I mean, I'm speaking to an expert in this space, having run shared spaces and things like that you've done, right? One of the things that I liked most is when I saw, you forcing that relationship between large corporations and the startup community, and making sure that those conversations can happen in some meaningful way. Now, also,
Yeah.
I'll declare my hand. I used to have a startup, and a large corporate sort of semi-snuffed it out. So, as a large corporate, you've got to also be, you know, pretty careful about and deliberate about how you run those relationships and manage those relationships. But yeah, I've never been one for a large corporation versus a startup sort of us versus them narrative.
On that there, right? I think you touched on something interesting. You're talking about, swapping the grid to the eBay of it. So you kind of said as what used to be the product is actually the old product could actually be the new platform for others, right?
Exactly.
The old product for yourself could be that new platform for others, and then it leverages all of it. So that's interesting, right? Then it would make decision makers and boards think, okay, well, what are we actually selling here, and how does the wait list become the biggest heavyweight, right? The Airbnb thing, right? How does the wait list become that? So that's interesting. But see,
As long as
dude, other people aren't thinking about this type of shit, bro. That's why you're smart. That's why they pay you the big bucks, bro, to give you the big titles.
mate, you've got some power hitters on this, and then you bring someone out of Division 3 like me to get on this. So
Get the boys.
I don't know.
Supporting
Get the
the
boys
boys
on a call.
Get the boys. No, wait. So other one is I wanted to ask you because I knew it was true. I didn't know the age. It was true that you were the youngest exec member ever on a publicly listed company in New Zealand. Is that right? Or was that right?
Not sure.
It was.
I'm not going to declare my age. I don't know. There's been all sorts of discussion. You're not going to get me to share with
I'll
you
say it.
or anybody else.
Sure. I'm pretty sure that that was accurate. Someone, maybe you didn't tell me. Maybe someone. I think it was.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it was not accurate, right? Like it, you can. I'm pretty sure.
I know how old you are. I think it's true. I know what those other boards look like. Okay, maybe the code word was pineapple. Remember, I told you say pineapple, and that's a safe word. Nikhil, you can say pineapple. Okay, cool. We'll move on. All right, so
pineapple squared.
All right, so we'll go to another piece. The New Zealand, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, I think the flips changed in the 3s and 2s, another one. The 3s and 4s, and other 1s and 2s. I think that within the next 3 years, there's going to be more opportunity than ever to reshape what New Zealand could potentially be, right? What do you feel if you could put your magical sprinkle Ravishankar dust all over the shit? What would you like to see the new New Zealand for business look like? With the minds being as open as they are now to what could be built on the platform of what you see. How do you see that world potentially looking for New Zealand?
For me, and this is sort of it's a hypothesis, right? But it was formed while working overseas as well in some of the sort of more specialized locations. And for me, I hope the New Zealand has 4 or 5 areas where we double down and say, this is what we're going to be world famous for, right? Because in a way, our greatest strength and, our number 8 wire mindset and so on can sometimes be our greatest weakness in that we sometimes struggle to scale. And what I'm hoping is, especially now, where more than ever we need to trade high value goods and services globally, because some of our more established export earners are in a bit of strife. I hope that we don't spread ourselves too thin, and there is some conscious thought, collective thought around, what do we want to be famous for? And so when someone thinks of that problem, instantly they think of New Zealand as the solution, right? For it. And I think that's very important, because if we can do that, then we attract the best from around the world who are interested in that area. And it's sort of this sort of a symbiotic relationship that gets created, right? And that will create the momentum we need. And then our next new second or third largest export earners will start to sort of emerge out of that. Um, so that's a sort of thing I think about a fair amount in terms of what the new New Zealand could be, I suppose.
I think that a real interesting piece there is that there's been thousands of problems and thousands of solutions coming for it, but if everyone does the same, tries to do all of it, there's no clarity. And I think that the word thereafter there's that collective vision for kind of what you said was, what does New Zealand want to be famous for? Like, I think it's a really interesting question, right? Like, after COVID, what would New Zealand? And I don't think the answer can be tourism, because that was the old. I guess I mean, maybe it can, but in a different way. But it's interesting if tech's weightless, exactly to your point. What would that be? If what could MacGyver do? I guess is the one.
Yeah, and some of that could be just to actually use the whole our country as a bit of a test bed, right? Because regardless of your politics, our brand, even through this crisis, has only been strengthened, right? Now, people may compare and contrast the Swedish approach with the New Zealand approach or whatever, but generally speaking, we will come out of this, and I'm hoping, not too many people are impacted still, because we're not out of the woods by any means, but we will come out of this with a much stronger brand as a country. And one of the things that I always think about is, if you take Auckland, for example, right? And the New Zealand energy system, it is the envy of the world in terms of the characteristics that we've got to be able to test new innovation in the space of energy, right? So every time I think of Auckland or New Zealand, I think of these big billboards on the way from either Tel Aviv airport or Berlin airport or San Francisco airport, as you're going into the tech hubs, a billboard that says New Zealand is open for business. We're open to give you access to our environment to be able to test new innovation and build that, and in doing so help scale something that will have a global applicability, right? So if you mix those two concepts together, I think there's something extremely exciting, because our brand is strong for all the right reasons. And frankly, as someone who was born in India and who studied here and went to university here, went overseas and did some work, right? I value what inherently you get out of just living in this environment, right? Where you can be a free thinker, where you can question anything you want, where it's okay to experiment, and we like to tinker, and it just seeps into your bones, right? This thing about being a New Zealander seeps into your bones, and there's so much value in that. We just need to harness all of that, and I think we will.
I think so too. The bro Mike, he's managed to fill up half the screen with his question. Robett, loving this. Nikhil, you're a weapon. Zooming out a little bit, I'm a massive believer that beyond government, it's our responsibility to ensure that the right ideas are aligned around. So what's your one big idea for Aotearoa to help lead the bounce out of COVID? Please tell me it's not a shovel-ready project. Oh, Mike. He's such a good bastard. Thoughts?
Look,
I guess, you go for it.
Okay, so this is a very specific one, and this is a lot of what my work is about, right?
Go there.
And what is something what Vector is focused on quite a bit or too. We call it our symphony strategy, and essentially this is the thesis. So there's a global energy crisis, right? And there's three things that we're trying to solve for in energy: reliability of energy, right? Affordability of energy, and the fact that it is green and clean, right? And there's two ways you can attack this problem. You can attack this problem by building some really innovative ways of generating clean energy, right? Be it clean nuclear or a more effective way of doing hydro, or whatever the case may be, solar, large-scale wind, whatever it is, right? And a lot of the world is focused on that, and that's a good thing. It's we think that's a worthy cause to focus on, but then there's there is another problem that solving will also address some of these issues, which is on the demand side, right? In energy, an end user is just a passive consumer of energy. We haven't played an active role in energy at all. And now there's enough technology there that you can actually drive a whole bunch of demand side optimization, and what we call it driving a unit, driving up the productivity of every unit of energy, such that we're getting more value out of each kilowatt of power, for example. And for that, you need a completely different energy system. You need a system where the customer is at the center of it. You're leveraging technology. You're trading with each other. There's peer-to-peer trading. There are, you're accelerating the electrification of transportation. And so, one big idea from a New Zealand perspective is we can be the petri dish of this energy innovation when it comes to demand side optimization, right? So, a large part of the work I do is focused on building platforms. Our teams and what Victor does more broadly is developing platforms that can take energy from wherever it comes and make sure that we're optimizing it for the network that we're looking out for. So we are working with a few large technology companies around using Auckland as a petri dish for energy innovation, right? And I think we can lead the way in that globally. We can be the first 100% carbon-free energy system, for example, before anyone else can, if we put our mind to it. And coming out of this crisis, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities in that space. Sorry, Mike, I know that was a long-winded rant.
No, it's mega. I don't know if I've shared with you. So I'm working with a bro, Mike, CEO of a company called Sierra Energy, clean tech company, and he's developed. Basically, it's a whole system which converts like rubbish and municipal waste into energy with zero carbon emissions. And he's coming to potentially look to try and do it in New Zealand to see if you could. It does about 50 tons a day through the system for about 40,000 people. But if you got 100 of these throughout the nation, you could arguably have New Zealand's as the world's first zero waste nation. The science is proven, the sun, the tech, whatever. But like you think about that, if power can go back into the grid, you talk about this on the other side. I'll send you a link after this. We'll link up because I'm helping the bro out as well, which is mega. It's awesome. It's a pretty brave one, because as soon as you crack that just rolls out everywhere. That's huge.
And we are always sort of a bit self-deprecating and humble sort of type of folk here, right? But the world and people who are thinking about this problem very, very seriously look at New Zealand as a very credible laboratory for solving that problem. And so we need to make it happen. Yeah, and that's if you ask me, the one thing that excites me to go to work every day, it's knowing that that's the problem statement that we're working on. That's it's exciting stuff.
We've got. It's almost like we should organize like a Zoom call with all the new ones and twos, like all the new crew. Just be like, all right, guys, Chatham House, who's good? Like we went to that other one. Jeez, imagine doing that like via Zoom now. Okay, I'll talk to you about that as well after. Oh, yeah, okay, so Amos. No, I'm serious. Okay, I'll put a note right now. I'll be like new GC Illuminati Zoom chat. Okay, cool. Amos, bro, this is wealth of information, such fundamental forward thinking. Thanks, brother. You're on point. Paul Thomas, from what I believe, Victor owns HRV as well. From your knowledge, how has this business been impacted with the inability to sell product? Paul Thomas.
Well, it's been tough for that business. When social distancing and maintaining bubbles are the thing, going to people's homes to put ventilation systems in isn't high on anyone's agenda, right? So it's been a difficult period for everyone who's involved in that business, including a portion of my team that supports them. But we'll bounce back. We've got really good plans around, one of the big issues in New Zealand is energy poverty, right? And part of that is the ability
to... What does energy poverty mean?
It's just people not being able to afford energy for heating needs or whatever the case may be, right? And there's so many myths that when you really look at data you can debunk, right? People living in low socioeconomic housing, for example, are using a lot more energy than someone living in a brand new build, built with high quality products, right? And insulation and so on. So there is a bunch of stuff that using organizations like HRV you can do to address those challenges if you point them in the right direction and you work with the right partners to solve some of those challenges in the short term. So, we're looking at all of those types of options as a means to sort of restart businesses like HRV, but it's been tough for them.
Brooke Patton, will Vector continue to work remotely following COVID-19? Some of the teams.
Yeah, I mean, our whole philosophy around working from home and what can we achieve by working from home or working remotely has changed, right? Because we now have the confidence that things can be done. I'll give you a good example of this, and maybe I'm oversharing, but when we went into
Actually,
level 4 lockdown.
Pause. Double check if you're allowed to say what you're about to say.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay, cool. Go. Continue. No pineapple. Continue.
Thank you. So when we were going into level 4 lockdown, like everybody else, we were going, okay, let's collate the list of the most critical people, because also we didn't want to use our essential service banner as just a pass out for people to just travel willy-nilly, right? Because you go, I work for Vector. So at any police checkpoint or whatever, you go, I work for Vector. And they go, oh, you must be keeping the lights on. And not all of us do that job, right? I'm not up on poles fixing cross arms or transformers. So we said, let's collate a list of people that we must have on that essential list so they can get to work if we absolutely need them to. And that was when it came back, that was a pretty long list, right? Because we were very conservative when we pulled that. We said, oh, there's all these reasons why people might have to go back into the office. And ironically, and this is a real testament to what this last 4 weeks has taught us all, is when we're now thinking about moving to level 3, where actually you've got a little bit more flexibility around people coming into work and so on, that list has actually shrunk significantly, right? It's 20% maybe of what that original level 4 list was when the lockdown was even more severe. And that's only happened because our confidence that all of these people can work from home and be productive and collaborate effectively has gone up, right? So yeah, I mean, long way of saying, I think flexible working will be absolutely on the agenda. And I think quite a few people will choose to, if not full-time work from home, really think about the options they have now. And, we're open to it.
And a lot more decision makers and CEOs, whatever, that were hesitant before about either remote work or people coming in only 4 days a week or whatever. I think it's going to be clear that that's going to potentially happen as well. Last question is, Robett, I don't think big businesses, including Vector, can pivot like startups. Even if you're using the same platforms, what is restricting large corporates and businesses are their mindset and inefficient processes. Could you ask Nikhil how does he combat this for his people and teams to enable them to pivot and accelerate with the market and their customers? Most can't. You can. How do you do it?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a $1 trillion question. Good question, that. I think that's right. There's been a lot of systems and processes that have calcified into large corporations that make them slower and less nimble, at least, I was going to say in theory, but in reality too, than startups, right? But the odds of a startup succeeding aren't very high either. And so that's why I keep going back to that relationship between that startup mentality and testing those ideas and the resources and platforms that a large organization can provide. It's that intersection where value gets created, in my opinion. And the more we can treat that as a symbiotic relationship and not a battle, I think the more value that we start to create. Answering this question specifically, I think what we're trying to do is to simulate, if you will, some of the processes and approaches that work well and effectively in a startup environment. So we are trying to move away from processes that have served us well potentially in the past to ones where we are trying to experiment more. We are working with partners with a mindset that we don't have all the answers. Uh, One of the most fundamental things we're doing is breaking business unit silos, right? And saying, actually, these hierarchical models that we all live in, these power structures, aren't, it's not an ownership structure, right? If someone's in my team, I don't own them. They just happen to live in my area of expertise and grow their careers there. But all the action actually happens in cross-functional teams. And so picking, being very clear around strategic prioritization, the bets, placing the bets where they matter, and then bringing whoever is required internally from within your organization or from the external world to just hone in and focus and solve those problems. That is one of the, I think, most powerful ways large corporations can move away from this sort of BAU churn, crank the handle process that we find ourselves in, to one where we can start to operate as nimbly as any startup. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's
Yeah.
doable, and we are genuinely moving down that path, and we've been doing so for a few years now. Um, and there's a lot of examples of innovation that comes out when you work that way. In
Yeah.
these sort of cross-functional teams, just hyper focused on solving a problem and attack it, right? Which is what a
Yeah.
startup essentially does. You don't try and be all things to everybody. You define the problem you want to solve and you go for it.
Solid, man. I know you're tapped and we've got a boost, but before we go, I've got one more comment. Is from do you know a GIF? Is it a GIF? Ravishankar? Have you heard of him? Have you? I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know him.
we adopted him a few years ago. He we first put him on. We had him as our sponsorship sort of charity thing for a while, and
Yeah, yeah.
he grew up
Like
into a
you
cute little.
win him for a raffle.
Yeah. See what that Jit Ravishankar doesn't know is the one with the mic wins. Right? He can ask all the questions, but
My man, dude. Much love, brother. It's always rad linking up and connecting. And I would just like, because I don't think you probably get it from too many other people. I am very proud of you for being a young brown face in a world in a very high position that has influence, because you put lots of breadcrumbs of positivity and opportunity that people can look to and see to. And when you're a young buck, you need those things to see. So if other people don't say, I just wanted to tell you as a mate, and I tell you already, but I think it's important that other people know that I have a massive amount of respect for what you've done, your brain, and the fact that your hair is looking just spot on, mate. It's like you it's like you got it fancy for me. It's like it was a special day. You're dressing up.
here's my hairdresser. She did it.
Hey, good job. Good to see you. All right, brother. I'll leave you to the fam thing, bro.
All right.
Much love, and I'll talk to you soon. And I'll invite you to the Illuminati thing. It's gonna be mean.
Thanks, and thanks for doing this as well. Good on you for doing it.
Of course, brother. All right, man. Talk soon.
Bye.
Later, G. Peace. It's the bro, Nikhil. Such a flipping good bastard. I love talking to bros that are and friends of in all sorts and all different sectors. Just watching how their brain works, how they think about things, how they process and analyze like real time problems and solutions that they're coming up with, and how they're leading. And it's awesome to see a lot of bunch of the crew that are weapons, I call them, really leading and doing good things. And for this, I've also got an announcement. Just a quick announcement. It's not gonna be long. Just a quick one. I've been going batshit crazy on this. Of these, if you've been tuning in for the last however long, I think this is almost up to that. I think I've interviewed almost about 80 episodes with about 100 people. I think is we're about to for the last couple of weeks. But it comes to an end today. Just very briefly, I'm not going to be doing this all day, every day. As soon as we go to L3, my mental headspace was, robett, come in from flipping day one till you get out of 4, you're going to go to town and do the shit. You're going to flipping open the Rolodex, get all the different brains, get all the different thinking, and get it all out there. So from next week, it's going to be toned down quite a bit, because I've got a lot of other shit as well that I need to be doing. But I feel that there has been so much goodness and awesomeness, and I think this was the right thing to do for the right time, for the right people. So if you've been sick of the push notification coming saying robett is live with ... robett is live about flipping 5 or 6 times a day for the last 5 weeks or however long this thing has been, I apologize. And then I say, I'm sorry, I'm not sorry, because I know that all the different learnings and stuff that's come out of it has helped a shit ton of people. Because I, all day, every day, get messages from people who are learning a shit ton from all. I am getting messages from people like you who are learning a bunch from people that are in my circle. So I feel good that it's been able to, expand the little bubble a little bit in terms of thinking to get it out there, and a whole bunch of different ideas and things. And one of the ideas I've been thinking about is how do we collate all of this amazing ideas and all of this amazing insights and leadership and everything into something. And I've got something coming out of that too. So if you've been tuning in, this was the last time I'm going to be doing this much. I'll still obviously do my content and interviews and Robett Live, blah blah, but I definitely am not going to be doing flipping 8-10 hours a day just going nuts like this for a little bit longer too. So Chantal, there you go. Thank you, Robett. It's been great. Thanks so much. Much love, Chantal. Thank you. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. It's been mega. So come on Tuesday, bring on down from 4 to the 3. Be good, be safe in the bubble, and then I will still be doing this. I will not stop doing what I do. That's totally fine. But we've got to tone this shit down. If you're not sick of me yet, I'm sick of me by now. So it's mega. I'll give G props. Big G, good human. I hope you've enjoyed. And actually, if all of the episodes as well, we put them on Spotify. You just go to Spotify, search up my name, you'll be able to find that there. It's a YouTube playlist. If you go to YouTube, it's all there as well. So cool. Enjoy the weekend, team. This is coming to the end of the chaos that has been just flipping Robett Fest and his friends talking a whole bunch of business shit for the last month. Sorry, not sorry. This was fun. This was awesome, and I really appreciate it. All right, team. I'll see you all soon. Adios. Deuces. Whiskey time. Peace.